Welcome to WTF 20, a 3 days digital conference for artists brought to you by PrintShop by Designhill. And PrintShop is the world's leading creative print-on-demand marketplace in association with Illustrators Artists Club, Graphic Designers Club, Pattern Designers Club, Typography Designers Club, Logo Designers Club, and really special and big thanks to our online learning partner, Milan Art Institute, Georgia, USA. I, Arudhiti, shall be your host for the session. It's my great pleasure and we feel honored to welcome our AMA speaker for the day, Peggy Dean, who worked in Portland, Oregon. She is the best-selling author of The Ultimate Brush Lettering Guide, Botanical Line Drawing, and Peggy Dean Guide to Nature, Drawing, and Watercolor. Oh, that's amazing. She is a self-taught artist born into creativity through a struggle with mental health. She promotes embracing imperfections and living out loud. She travels the world for speaking engagements and hand-on workshops. So today, she's going to talk about how to grow as a lettering artist and build a following on social media. Peggy, thank you so much for taking out your time and joining us. We are so honored to have you on board.
Thank you. I'm excited to hang out with you guys. Can I just have a quick side note and say that your intro video, I'm going to have to do all of my intro videos from now on because it was so good. I love the music. It was inspiring, little animations. Anyway, loved that.
Before we start the session, I would like to give you a quick shout out to our partners and a bit of an introduction about us. So Peggy, you can interact to our audience and we'll start with our questions.
Sure. Okay, yeah. Hey guys. So I have a lot of insight about growing. I started as a lettering artist on Instagram, and that's kind of how my following started, if you will. But I want to answer all your questions. I have some tips that will definitely help, but I think that most importantly, I like to hear your pain points because that's what I can address directly, rather than giving you some sort of presentation that's, fluff or like over, when they graze over things. I'm not into it. So I want to give you like direct roadmap kind of answers. So if you have questions, even if they're vague, hit me with it because I probably have some sort of insight or opinion. I'm very opinionated.
Cool. So let's start with some questions that we have shortlisted. And so what advice you would give to the people who are starting their career in lettering, to the lettering newbies?
Can you repeat the first part of that?
Yeah. So, what tips and advice you would give to the lettering newbies who are starting their career?
The biggest thing, and I hate myself for saying this, but because I'm all about like doing all the things all the time, but is niching. And it's however you pronounce it where you're from. Some people say niche, some people say niche, but having a niche slash niche is really important. It's not necessarily on style, because I think that lettering, one of the big things is when you're into lettering, it's when you can cover a lot of different techniques, that's great. And it's not actually going to hurt you as a letterer, but what will hurt you is if you are regurgitating everything else that exists on Instagram or wherever it is. Like, you know, Googling short quotes to put up is not going to get you anywhere. It's just going, like, you could have extreme talent, like to the max. And if you say something like, live, laugh, love, so did 3 people right above you. Do you know what I mean? So when you're able to hone in on something specific, it's going to greatly impact why people are following you. So for example, like some people will go on and they're really focused on a particular subject or niche or value or cause or something like that. And that's how they build. It's because they're inserting a bit of like organic personality into what it is that they're saying. So in the beginning, I'm not going to lie, I totally did. Like I literally Googled 2-word quotes, 3-word quotes, and I was trying to find like inspirational things to practice. And while that's great, it should be considered practice. I don't think it should be considered like how you represent yourself, because you're going to stifle your growth right from the get-go. So that's my nutshell answer before I keep going. I could just like sit there and like say that same thing in like 17 different ways.
How can you stand out among so many lettering artists on IG?
Yeah, so that would be exactly what I was talking about just now. So it's basically being able to hone in on one specific, not one, but you know, something that's specific to your bottom line. To get more specific though, it could be, you know, you've probably seen people who are lettering like Bible verses, if they're, you know, religious in Christianity or something. Like, it's just an example. So they hone in on that, and then they build an audience based off of that specific thing. And because of it, while their audience might not skyrocket at first, what it does do is it demands engagement, because people can relate to it. They're following them not just to see pretty lettering, but to also see the content behind it. And what I will say in regard to today's algorithm and today's need on social media, engagement is way more important than your follower count. Like I have such low engagement now, and it's because I blew up in the beginning. And so I have to try extra hard to reach people and to have some engagement. But I also am, you know, as an educator, I bounce all over the place. But I will say from experience that when you have that niche audience, you can reach them a lot quicker, a lot easier and directly. And in turn, whatever you're trying to provide as far as a service or an offering, they will convert a lot higher than if they were to be, you know, super broad. Such as like a phrase like beach, comma, please.
So we are taking next question. So the next question is how to create relatable work that followers can appreciate.
Yeah, I think that anything that you have to say that's genuine and not regurgitated is relatable. So another example would be, you know, there's a lot of people who are really big in activism. I personally, if I were to start like a new account and it was just on lettering, like I'm so passionate about animal activism. I'm so passionate on keeping things, I'm trying so hard. I'm such an animated speaker when it, when it comes to my hands. Okay. As far as like keeping things cruelty free, keeping animals not tested for things. And so what I would do is find a creative way to get that message across, and maybe not in a preachy way at all, but in a way that's educational, in a way that's like thought-provoking. So, in addition to that though, if you have like 1 or 2 words as your, an image that you put online, your caption, you should treat that like a mini blog post. Like you can ask prompting questions. It's okay if you have 10 followers and they're not going to respond, because your question isn't about the answer. And if you get answers and engagement, awesome. But if not, think of it as like a thought with a question that's going out into the universe, and it's making people think. It's making people have the content that you're putting out there resonate with them and think about it later. In turn, they're going to expect that from you, and then it's going to get them more engaged. It's like they say when it comes to products that you put out there, like people don't take action on the first time they see something. They have to see it 6, 7, 8 times, and it's like in their mind then. And then maybe the 9th time is when they're like, oh, I relate, and I'm going to put myself out there because I finally feel like I'm in this space where I feel like I'm heard too, because people can genuinely connect. And that's what we're missing so much in the world. And so that's why I think like when you can hone in on that, it's going to reach people so much faster than anything else.
Yeah. So just wrapping up with this, like we should create, relatable and engaging content for our audience, so that they can engage and relate to it, more shareable content. Okay. So let's taking up the next question. Should social media have a theme or a particular style? Should we post like in a particular style or series? Is that necessary?
Post in what?
In particular style, in particular colors, style, to make an algorithm.
As far as like your feed goes, to have consistency throughout. Okay. I think that yes and no, because I think that it is nice. There's a lot of people who like to work tangibly and analog, and they like to work on paper. And you know what people like to see? They like to see behind the scenes. And so when you take a picture of what you're working on and your hand happens to be in it, and maybe there's a weird shadow on the top left, download Snapseed and use the Dodge tool. I'm just saying, but people like to see that. And so if you take a picture like that and you put it in your feed, it's inevitably going to get lost among what you might consider a beautiful color palette. What I've seen people do though, if they are really finicky about this, and there are people that are, and that's fine because their feed is gorgeous. You can work in, you might have a color palette that you love. Let's say you have 4 primary colors, you have like 8 accent colors that work with that. And then you have like a total of like 30 colors that are like your go-to. You can do those in chunks. And then you have like, 12 photos that have like the undertones of like seafoam green and like a bright poppy red, something like that. And then it just kind of slowly, gradually goes into a different color palette as you move through it by weaving those colors in and out. It will create for more of a consistent feed. But at the end of the day, I don't think that it's so important to like sit there and think, okay, this square is going to be complementary to this square because of this square doing this. That's my personal preference. I know that some people are very anal about that, especially as designers. Like we really look at stuff like that. But who are you targeting here? Are you trying to target other artists who are going to judge you on what your feed looks like as a whole? Or are you trying to target a customer who's going to be able to keep you in your creative field? And then, by actually hiring you or purchasing something or supporting you in that way. So that's why like behind the scenes are really cool to see, because it connects people more. It also shows your talent behind just a pretty graphic, and it shows appreciation for it, because you might see a really pretty graphic and you're like, okay, this is cool. But have you ever noticed that when you see the layers and layers and layers of drafts that somebody has, or tracing paper, or all these like grid layouts, like you're thinking, oh my gosh, so much went into this final product, and somehow I kind of like the drafts better because it just shows how much they were into it. It's like old school animation for Disney. Like when you see the flip through of them actually moving, but you see all the like face circles, and then like where they face like the noses, like those the guides, you know, I don't know what they're called, but man, I'm obsessed with them. I think it's so cool. So I think that's totally up to you. But what I do think is worth mentioning is whatever you choose, keep that style consistent. So if you want to show behind the scenes, or you want to show multiple colors, then there are ways that you can formulate that to where it makes sense and you can thread through them. But I mean, like, I finally created a color palette late last year that I'm really happy with. And that's not to say that's not going to change, but when you look at a chunk of my feed, you're going to see like a kind of a consistent hue and tone to it. So that's kind of a weird roundabout answer, but that's what I'm giving you.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is the major question that Chris James have asked, and we have got many entries of this question. And so Chris James, we are just answering a quick question, and the question is, where do you find inspiration so that you are not seeing the same stuff and just repeating them?
Yeah.
How do you find your inspiration?
That's a good question, because it's kind of piggybacking on what I was saying before, but it's like, where do you find that spark of what you're actually going to create? My answer to that is look inside of yourself. And I say that like, oh my gosh, we all have such unique perspectives. And so if you can sit there and like do a mind map, like create your personal mission statement. This is something I have my members do on my website, or they're my members, but you get it. It's open, by the way, for 3 more days due to being isolated. So if you're interested in that, but yeah, so, it's thepigeonletters.com/flock. Mission statement though, if you can do a personal mission statement, and there are ways to go through this, but like thinking of your 5 core values, okay? And then how do your 5 core values intertwine with X, Y, and Z in your life? And you can determine what those are. But from doing that, it really lets you kind of isolate exactly what matters to you the most. And I think that what's interesting about doing that is you could do 5 core values in your life, in your day-to-day, but you could also do it like, okay, so for example, I love animals a lot, but what are the 5 main reasons that pull me into that? You might really love flowers. So you could do a whole bunch of lettering around quotes on flowers and do flowers, but then if you sit down, you write down, what is it that you love about them? What emotions does it evoke? What vibe do you feel when you see them? What maybe their meaning behind it matters to you. Maybe you're like a total science geek and you love the flower like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. You know, when I first started lettering, that was the first thing that I did outside of just lettering, is I did a whole series, and I drew a flower and I did lettering of the flower, and then I listed like what regions, you know, state flower or country flower it was, what it meant, and then I listed the kingdom scientific classification, because it was just interesting to me and it was fun. And you know what that did? It actually got me featured on Tombo's 25 letterers to follow. It got me featured somewhere else, and I went from like 1,000 up to like 4,000 followers in a week, and that was just because I was doing something that I was interested in. So breaking down things that you care about. And I say this with such passion because where do you find inspiration? Everyone's like, look on Pinterest, look in the stores, look at color palettes. And it's like, that's all great and all, but those are other people's ideas. that you're just regurgitating. You know, it's like we might be really interested or we might appreciate something in someone else's work, but that's not coming from us. Therefore, we can't maintain that. That's not something that we can stretch so that it resonates for the long run. Like, that's not coming from us. So we don't have anything to back it unless we continue following, looking outside of ourselves to bring it back around. And that's way more work than necessary.
So thank you so much. So Peggy wants to say that you have to look into yourself, what you like the most, and create best out of it, about your emotions, about you love what you like it. You need not to search for inspiration on Pinterest. Yeah. So okay, we are taking the next question. And what are the best ways to build your audience on Instagram? And I suppose we have answered that questions. Okay. So anything more you want to say about it?
Yeah, I have a piggyback to it, because you can't just share something and then people find it. So I'm gonna give you guys this real fast. Okay, wait, maybe I'll tell you and then you can do it, because I'm gonna take way too long to type all this stuff. So okay, hashtags. Literally hashtags. Like, this is your gold mine, is hashtags. And you can sit there and use hashtags all day long and they might get lost in the shuffle. And that's because they're like considered general hashtags. So you have general hashtags, and then you have like key phrase that are very topic oriented hashtags. And it's so important to use them. If you think they're hideous and you don't want them clogging your feed, Instagram will, what's it called? It'll collapse your caption after like 3 lines or something. So if you just like do some line breaks and then they sit at the bottom, and then you don't have to worry about it cluttering your caption, or you can just do it in a comment and do your captions like after you post, and that's fine too. And then it'll hide that. But you want to include hashtags. And so if you're doing lettering, you don't just want hashtag lettering. You don't just want, hashtag, let's say you're a brush lettering, sign lettering. Yes, those are great to have because they're going to show up and people can follow hashtags just like they can follow you. So that's boosting your exposure also. In addition, it'll show up on the Explore feed. And I don't know about you guys, but I spend a lot of time on Explore feed because of algorithm, and I just see the same things over and over. Not that I don't love those people on my feed, but like, I just don't look anymore because it's like, I love her, but I've seen it. Like sometimes I just like to appreciate other people's stuff. So real quick, I'm just going to mention this before I get too far into it. If you go to bit.ly/WTF Peggy Dean, it's going to take you directly to a 40-page ebook that I'm providing for you guys, plus worksheets. And the worksheets are broken down into exactly how to find hashtags that are meant for you specifically. I love breaking things down like that. So I'll put it right here, but I'm sure you guys have got it because you're so on it. But how come it won't send? It's just pleasant internet. Okay, I'm not going to put it there because it doesn't want me to. Oh, because I'm in questions. Silly me. This is why I shouldn't do stuff like this.
Yeah.
While
So
doesn't.
I suppose let's take this question because we get another awesome votes for this question. It's a nice question. How to get out of this artist block or a creative slowdown? We are answering mess egg questions.
Okay. This is one of my favorite things to do. I happen to love artist block because it brings me back to basics. So this goes across any form of art that you're creating, whether it be like watercolor, whether it be drawing, whether it be lettering. This is silly, but what I would do is first of all, I don't know if you guys are members of like Skillshare. If you go to skillshare.com/r/the pigeon letters, you'll get 2 months for free. But things like that, you can take classes on like special effects or things like that, something that you might not know. And even when you do take classes on things that you think you know, there's always something to learn. And I love learning, and I love like little techniques or even just like something to increase productivity in your workflow. So you might find a little trick here and there, but learning, number one. Number two, which is my favorite, is I call it like swatching. And swatching can be, I mean, with watercolor and paint and things like that, it makes sense because you're sitting there and you're literally swatching. And then you could pick two colors and see how they blend together and then change the shape of your swatch. It's just putting it on paper. So with lettering, my favorite way to do this is to go down the alphabet with names. So I would start with, you know, the first name that popped to my head with each letter of the alphabet, and I would letter it. So like Abigail, Bobby, Christina, Deidre, Elizabeth, Frank, you know, just like whatever came up first. And I found myself challenged because there were like capitals that I didn't necessarily practice too much. So when I'd get stuck and I didn't like it, I was able to revisit that. In addition, you can do, one of my favorite things to do when I'm really stuck is thumbnail sketching. So when I say one of my favorite things to do, I mean one of my favorite outcomes. It's not one of my favorite things to do because I'm impatient. But thumbnail sketching is so good. I have it, oh man, I just did a live workshop the other day and I did one, but I don't have it sitting here anymore, which is strange because I'm very unorganized with all my stuff. But basically on a piece of paper, it could be an 8.5 by 11 or A4 or whatever size you guys use, but you just draw out, and they can be rough, like 4 to 6 different rectangles. And then inside of it, think of a short phrase, and it might be stupid, but that's practice. That's when you can Google short phrase or get more creative. And, you know, like I today was thinking, okay, there's some, you guys, if you steal this, I'm happy for you because you should steal my brilliant idea. It's not brilliant. It's not. But everyone's doing all these posts about wash your hands. But then I was washing my hands this morning and I thought, gosh, when I wash my hands, I really focus on the backs of my hands. Like I go as if it's lotion. It's like nothing's getting right here. Like literally nothing is getting on my hand right here. And so then I was like, okay, what about lettering something that says wash your fingers? Because it's your fingers. So just wash your fingers. So anyway, I want everyone to do that. How about everyone do what? Well, I know, yes, you need to wash your hands and not just your fingers. But my point is people also need to focus on their fingers. So I was thinking that. And anyway, back to thumbnail sketches. So if you were to letter that, wash your fingers, and you did it all evenly, that might look great. But what if you want to draw attention to one or two words, or, you know, just one main word? So you could have fingers as the focus. So draw, I say draw because lettering is drawing, not writing, your main word, and then draw the others to accompany it. And then, so do that in a couple and see how things start changing on your thumbnail sketches on each block. And you don't have to make this fancy. This is just with a pencil and a sketch to see how it lays out. And then you might surprise yourself because by like 5, you're thinking, oh gosh, this is not at all what I thought I was going to start with, but I actually like this one better, because you might incorporate like a banner or a framing of some kind. And it just forces you and pushes you to get a little more creative with a phrase that you might have otherwise thought was just kind of boring. So little creative block exercises there. Also, you now have an assignment to get past any current creative block, which is wash your fingers.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We're running short of time. You were awesome, and we have taken a little more time off the slot we have given. So, all right. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. This brings us to the end of today's session. This was indeed a value-packed session with Peggy. We tried to answer as much question as possible. Thank you so much. And thanks for being lovely audience. Stay tuned for our next session for panel discussion, guys. Peggy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing a great pack of knowledge.
Thank you so much. This was fun. Fun.
Okay. Bye, guys.